All right, so hi Sarah, how have you been?
Hi, I've been doing pretty well, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember we've kind of been past a couple of sessions already, so we're sort of on like our last session here. We're kind of like closing up and kind of reflecting on our progress so far. So if you remember like how we talked about the idea of like the inner critic like many sessions ago and how that affects like our narratives and like how we feel about things. Can you kind of think of a time in the past like week or so where you've remembered the inner critic and then you were able to kind of like what was your response to the inner critic lately?
Yeah, so I had an experience in the past like month or so. I remember I was in the bathroom, kind of like washing up, and I looked in the mirror and I had a moment of like looking at myself and kind of criticizing my weight, or the inner critic was. And I kind of spoke back to it and said, no, I accept myself. I feel beautiful. And I kind of chose to ignore that voice saying like, oh, you've gained weight, you're not looking good or whatever. And yeah, it was kind of an empowering moment.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like if we think back to like when you first started, you found it very hard to respond to the inner critic and you like very strongly identified with like what the inner critic said. But I can see like you're a lot more empowered to respond against it. And I think that's a very like powerful change that you managed to enact in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that too. I feel a lot more empowered and um, empowered to either ignore the voice or to speak back to it and kind of correct it into what I want to say. And that's been really helpful for me.
Mhm. So yeah, I think like along that line, like I know we've discussed like family a little bit. Like, are there other ways you feel like your relationship with your family has maybe changed as a result of this like change in yourself?
Yeah, I think that with my relationship with them, I've kind of set more clear boundaries about,
Mhm.
you know, what I will kind of like accept. And I feel like they kind of now are aware that I really don't appreciate comments about like my body and my eating and stuff like that. And they're really good about, not making those comments anymore, which has been really helpful. And I think just generally feeling better has kind of made my relationship with them better. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've noticed like I feel like I described in earlier sessions, I felt like a big burden, and I don't really feel like that anymore. Um, I feel kind of like in a good place with
Mhm.
my family. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Like you've put in a lot of work to sort of establish those boundaries after like recognizing that it was what you need, and it seems to have a very like positive effect on like how you feel. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I've noticed, that with me feeling better, and my relationships are kind of improving. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel less judgment coming from them. Because I also feel like less judgment coming from myself.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I think, there's still sometimes like insecurity that pops up, but for the most part, it's definitely gone down a lot from what it was.
Mhm. Yeah, so if we can like go back to like that judgment from self aspect, like were there other ways in which like you remember you could have like judged yourself, but you responded differently with like what was the emotions instead of like if you think about like how you responded at sort of the beginning of our sessions versus now, like what has been the change in self judgment?
Yeah, I think another thing I can think of is definitely around like food and meals. Um, I've been able to get more comfortable with that. And I think earlier I would have been judgmental towards myself and, you know, how much food I was eating or what kind of food I was eating in terms of like calories. And now I kind of talk back to like the inner critic voice and say, no, this is okay. You know, this is nourishing my body and I deserve to, you know, have this food. And yeah, it's been really helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad you find it, like you found the whole thing very helpful, and like it seems like you've really created like a lot of new emotions instead of the ones you were feeling before.
Yeah, I think before it was a lot of like shame and guilt, fear, sadness, and if those like while those like still come up, it's like pretty rare. And I think I've for the most part been able to be more accepting of myself and yeah, it's been positive. I think a positive change I've noticed emotionally. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great to hear. Are there any other sort of like changes that you've noticed that like you feel like you didn't expect, or any other things that like came up for you?
Yeah, I feel like I've been, you know, steadily like kind of gaining weight and getting back to like a healthier weight. And before that would have like sent me into a spiral of, you know, restricting my eating and it's just very emotional. But now I'm kind of okay with it, which is crazy to say, but it's feels good because I feel like I'm getting to like a healthier place physically. Like I feel physically better, less like tired and yeah, fatigued. I felt a lot of the time, and I think that's really been helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, there's almost like this sort of like positive loop kind of going on for you, where like you've kind of mobilized these very adaptive emotions, like whether it be sort of rejection, like I guess not that rejection is an emotion, but like you've just kind of been a bit more like tough on the inner critic, and then this has allowed you to kind of gain control over like how you feel about things, and kind of helps you to manage like a lot of the overwhelming feelings that you used to have, like before, like being overwhelmingly sad or anxious, that would like kind of, you know, like have this sort of like spiraling effect. So it's great to see this sort of positive change. Like I think we've
Yeah,
come a very like long way from before.
thank you. Yeah, it feels really good. Like I like you said, like a lot of these emotions would just turn into a spiral, but now I feel like I'm able to catch it before it gets to that point. And with the acceptance, feel a lot better. Emotionally feel a lot better. And the things that would, you know, cause a lot of intense emotion are starting to cause less emotion, negative emotion. So yeah.
Yeah, like there's been a lot of like changes in that sort of thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think so. If you were to encounter maybe an overwhelming event, like something that prior to, before, like prior thinking about like many sessions ago, how would you respond differently today?
Yeah, I would think about um, maybe like going out with friends to eat would be pretty overwhelming just because I'd be thinking a lot about, you know, food and what kind of food would be available and, you know, what I'm going to eat and things like that. And it would make me kind of want to retreat and not go out and participate in like the social events and stuff and be with friends. But I think now um, I'm able to like relinquish some of that fear around food and, you know, accept that I don't, you know, necessarily know what the food is going to be like, but I'm okay with it. And, you know, I'm going to have something to eat and I'm going to feel okay. And, you know, it's not going to change my, like instantly change my appearance. And I'm starting to like disconnect the link between food and like body image and worthiness and beauty and all of those like connections that were so strong before. I'm starting to like disconnect them. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you remember, like these were very strongly associated with you, and it was very hard to kind of like you had to sort of develop a lot of acceptance. And like what I'm hearing from you is that you've gotten that acceptance now. You've really kind of accepted how you feel about certain situations, how you feel about yourself. And I think that's like also a very like good change.
Yeah, it feels really good. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of experiences and things before because I was so concerned about um, food and my body and things like that and how I looked. And it would stop me from, participating in a lot of things that I otherwise would want to participate in. So it feels good to be accepting of that and be able to do those things.
Sure. Yeah, so if we can go back to even like this idea of like self-worth and like self-love, like I remember a long time ago at a different session, you mentioned sort of feeling less worthy of love, this sort of like, I would call it like a core maladaptive schema of like, you were kind of worried about maybe being sort of shameful and like a burden. And I think like, how have you kind of felt about yourself lately instead of like those feelings?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me before, feeling like a burden and feeling unworthy of love, especially in like family relationships. And I think as I've kind of been more accepting of myself and my emotions, that I've realized that, I am worthy of love despite, what I've been through. And I don't feel like that worth is connected to body image anymore. Like I feel more accepting of my body and my appearance. And yeah, it feels like really positive and yeah, and I just don't feel like a terrible burden anymore. And I think my family also doesn't make me feel like that. And a lot of aspects of our relationship has changed, like I said, in terms of like setting boundaries and stuff. So that's been like really helpful in terms of making me feel like less of a burden.
Yeah, so like from what I'm hearing, like you've had a lot of changes that have really kind of tied together in a lot of different ways. Like this acceptance of self has sort of meant that you can kind of establish these boundaries with your family. It also means that you feel a lot more confident to reject what the inner critic says. And this means that in general, you're able to sort of have like a lot more adaptive emotions that lead you to like good, like happy feelings, like being able to spend time with friends and stuff. And these are all things that like took a lot of time to work on and required a lot of like emotional like work through, but we've been sort of able to, I guess like I've tried to like help you transform these emotions, and I feel like from my perspective you've really done that.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like a lot of these emotions and things have been transformed from what they were before in earlier sessions. And before our sessions was like so debilitating, and now things have kind of shifted and I feel a lot more in control. I think a lot of what I felt before was like very out of control, and I wanted to use food and body image as a way to like regain a sense of control. So yeah, releasing that and kind of leaning into the acceptance has really helped.
Yeah, and like that's always just really great to hear this like kind of theme of acceptance of self. Is there anything else like you feel like you wanted to discuss with me before we like close?
Yeah, I guess maybe if there are some like coping skills or resources that you think would be helpful to like keep in the future, and to like go back to if emotions do become heightened for whatever reason. I know like the reframing, like the inner critic voice has definitely been helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, so there are a number of like other methods in EFT that like we can use to sort of help kind of emotionally regulate. So one could be like observing and symbolizing the overwhelming feeling. So like you kind of observe the emotion as an observer, and you can kind of describe like, oh, what are you worried about the most? And this fear kind of can be visualized as like a black ball located in your stomach. And like, I think this is a way to sort of like kind of not be overwhelmed by emotions, but allow yourself to like observe and like notice them. There's also ways we can like offer support and understanding, like making a list of problems. Like if you ever have different issues in the future that you feel like are emotionally related, you can always like make a list of them and kind of identify how you feel about those. So as well as like maybe self-soothing. So like telling yourself that it's okay to feel these things is also a great way to like promote self-acceptance. So yeah, those are like a few of those techniques, and you can definitely like use them if you ever do feel like overwhelmed in the future.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. I'll definitely keep those in mind and use them.
Yeah, so if that's like all you wanted to talk with me, I know this is like technically our last session, but you can always come back to me if you feel like you have different issues popping up, or you have different things that you would like to discuss with me in the future. I'm always here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Mhm. So for now, I hope you have a wonderful day, and that I will hear from you like hopefully soon, not too soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.